Welcome to the session of our web series Fireside Chat with Champions, in which we interview global leaders and persons of eminence, asking them crowdsourced questions relevant to the biggest challenge we face today, COVID-19, and its impact on various aspects of our lives, and the way we can steer ourselves in current uncertainties. Today we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Vinod K Mall, Additional Director General of Police. He is a well-decorated officer from 1986 batch of Indian Police Service. While his professional career has many instances where he led from the front in very difficult situations, but in his own humble words, I quote him, I don't think doing a job and upholding the law requires you to be an extraordinary. In his approach to policing, he comes across as a pragmatic, impartial leader who believes in team spirit and motivation. Recently, he has flawlessly executed the task of safely getting close to 700,000 migrant workers from state of Gujarat to their home states of Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Driven by his own strong belief in concept of equity, independence, and social justice, he started a social movement, Buddha Se Kabir. Thank Mr. Mal for accepting our invitation. I would request you to let our viewers know a bit more about you and widely appreciated current activities of enabling close to 700,000 migrants get back to home safely. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak. It is really a pleasure for me to speak to the important people all over the world. It is a great opportunity to talk about things which are happening today. The whole world is facing a crisis. India being one of the largest population in the world, and its own situations, very specific situations which we are in. We are trying to deal with the problem. Thanks very much for remembering a quote of mine. I think you picked up from Outlook 2002. I'm reminded of that. It happened post 2002 riots, and that interview got published. It was a very casual statement, but somehow the Outlook people picked it up, and thank you for quoting that, and that sets the context in which we are talking about. I think all the there are serious problems, all right, today we are facing all over the world, but I think the willingness and the commitment is one thing which which sees you through, and if that is the case, I think you find things easier to perform and accomplish your task. So I would say that quote, which was very casually made at that time, I think it's relevant even 18 years later today in 2020.
No, sir, actually the reason I picked that quote was that actually, sir, your journey for past 18 to 19 years has been very close to the statement you said. See, there are two type of people, one who just gives statement for the bites, and then there are people actually who speak, as you or yourself, Buddha better than me. Buddha say that satya wo nahi hai jo ki bola jaye, satya wo hai jo kiya jaye. So it's imbibed. So truth is not speaking, it's about doing, and you're doing it, sir. So
that's right. The sincerity with which you make a statement, I think that is what is important, and that shows, that tests your honesty to whatever you stand for, and that much service, I would say, you can do to the society, which is in extreme need of solutions to the given problems. So about myself, I'm Uttar Pradesh. I'm basically from Uttar Pradesh. Studied in Indian Institute of Technology, Varanasi. I did my electronics engineering before joining the Indian Police Service in 1986, and that has been quite an experience. I have faced a lot of challenges, a lot of good times, tough times, even bad times, and that is how a career or a life is made of. But always there's something to learn, and this time, this COVID crisis, I was, as soon as the government of India, the Ministry of Home Affairs, decided to allow the people to travel from one place to another place. And that is mostly in the context of the people who have been working in the industrial parts of the country, and they basically come from states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and they have been working in relatively prosperous areas of Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Delhi, and such areas, Pune. So they were stranded when the lockdown was declared at 24th of March 2020. and they were in very adverse circumstances. They were not getting their salary in most of the places because the factories got closed, the industrial units got closed, and there was a need to uh, find a solution to this. The first priority, of course, for the government was to put a check on the spread of pandemics, and two, once allow people to reach wherever they want to go. Gujarat is one of the most industrialized states in India, and there are many million peoples, outsiders, people from other states working in Gujarat. UP itself contributes to maybe around 20 lakhs to 20 to 25 lakhs people. Uh, Most of them, they have settled down here, so they now consider themselves more a Gujarati. But there is a population which has recently shifted to Gujarat looking for jobs in the last 2-3 years, and they don't have their houses. They're not financially settled. They are not. They don't, have social connections, social dependence not working for them. So they needed to go back because they were not having money. The government provided food for some time with the help of the non-governmental organizations and many other individuals. And but 2 months is at that time a month and a week, so about 40 days was quite a long period for them to sustain. So as soon as the government of India started to allow, the government of Gujarat appointed two nodal officers, one myself, one IPS officers, and second an IS officer, that is Indian Administrative Service officer, two officers, and the groupings of the state was made. For example, we two of us were given to Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh is one of the most populous state, in fact, the most populous state in India. And as I said, largest number of people in Gujarat, and we had to transport about 800,000 people from Gujarat. Now the problems, as soon as we started, and we started early, as soon as the government of India started this scheme, we responded immediately, and next day only we had a meeting of all the nodal officers to decide the modalities, how to do it in the best possible manner. We know the numbers were big and there will be problems, but it's a kind of optimization where the difficulties are reduced. So that was our approach. So first was how to find out the people who wanted to go to register those people. So that was one, and to prepare a timetable in coordination with the railways, Ministry of Railways, so that we collect people at the appropriate time. So there is no waiting, there is no chaos. The people are collected in advance at a particular railway station so that they can be properly medically screened and made them sit in the trains. It also required, this scheme requires consent of the receiving state also. So we had to get the consent of the other state, that Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Fortunately, immediately as soon as we contacted the Uttar Pradesh government and the additional chief secretary, Mr. and the chief minister office, they were very prompt, in fact, and they said, we are ready for it. Let us work out a modality so that we can do it in the best possible manner. From their side, if you see, there were two problems. One is that once a train reaches a particular station, say for example Lucknow, the capital city of Uttar Pradesh, then there will be people who will be going to surrounding districts, 5-6 districts, which may be about 50 kilometers, 75, 100 kilometers. So have the transport available for them so that they can be immediately taken up. They are medically screened at that end also. And as soon as they reach their home place, home districts or home village, hometown, they have the proper quarantine facilities so that there is no health hazard at the receiving end. So this was the problem, and keeping this, they wanted that we send the complete list of the travelers in a particular train so that the corresponding district heads, that is the collector of the district magistrate of a particular district, is having the list in advance to make the necessary preparation. So to do this, we had this understanding, and I think we took just a day to sort this out. And from 2nd of May 2020, we started train from Ahmedabad. So, and this registration, this was at the government level, and for which we acted as a nodal officer. But we didn't confine ourselves to nodal officer. As soon as this situation started, there was a huge problem of registration of the people. And the two advantages we have, that we have a system of all India services in which the IS and IPS officers are recruited by government of India, and in other states also by virtue of the service affinity and the service culture. So that makes the task easier. Secondly, the presence of spatially distributed government machinery helped us in getting the people registered. For example, even in a village, we have sarpanch, that is head of the village, political head of the village, and we have a patwari or a talati who does the revenue work. So we have, and maybe a constable or head constable for every village. So those people were our hands at the grassroots level who organized the registration process. We wanted that nobody is left out. This is a difficult situation. People want to go there, go to their houses in their home state, and nobody should be left out. And this kind of a distributed presence of the governments at grassroots level helped us in registering the people. There a lot of good coordination was observed in the district magistrates and the district superintendent of police. And that was a must. That was the basic minimum which we needed. And I think Gujarat can take pride in the fact that we had coordination. There were problems, we had problems, stray problems in maybe Ahmedabad, but those problems were very, very minimal considering the huge task which was at our hand. Talking about at personal level, I was the nodal officer, but soon I was converted into a helpline because my name was there all over the social media, people getting through WhatsApp and Facebook and things like that, and everybody calling me, and on 29th this whole thing came out, and on 1st May morning, and I started getting calls, and you'll not believe that 1 hour and I'll get about 250 to 300 calls. Obviously that was something which I had not visualized, and that was sort of my phone collapsed. But I decided to pick up at least 10 to 15 calls an hour so that I could get an idea of what is happening. So I did this. I started taking calls. I knew that it was very, very insufficient. So in a day, I will take about 150 calls and maybe reply about 100 and odd WhatsApp messages. So I could personally reply to about 250 to 300 people in a day. So that was, kind of, it helped me to make my word reach to some people, and that got spread, and people started realizing that there is a system and there are people to respond. But 2 days, 3 days later, I thought that it was slightly not sufficient. So I had 3 people from my office to revert back to the calls which I couldn't reply. So that way we reached about 500 marks, 500 calls a day, which were being replied. Again, we are not replying all the calls. We are getting 1,000 plus calls, and we are in a position to reply about 30 to 40% of calls. But that was enough to spread the words that there's a mechanism, and this trains, immediately the trains started moving. On 2nd of May, the first train left, and that gives a lot of confidence to people that it has started. And we started saying that the numbers will increase. And within a few days, we reached 50 trains per day from Gujarat to other states. And UP was, we were able to do maximum, say something around 30 trains a day. We were able to do it. So, by say 20th of May, we had sent 437 trains with 6.11. So about 611,000 people having been sent. So, and again, by next 2 days, the count reached 507 trains. And, by 31st May, we reached about 580 to 600 marks, having sent 800,000 people to Uttar Pradesh. In total, Gujarat sent 1,017 trains, transporting about 1,500,000 people plus to different states. Of course, the UP was the maximum, about 800,000 people. So that was the kind of problem, and tried to handle it. There were problems here and there. All the problems we took it as sort of feedback to make our system better. For example, food was one problem. We saw a video where somewhere on way People were throwing food because that was not good, and that was, sort of inhuman, not very happy situation. So what we decided that all the collectors and SP in various districts were told to provide extra food with the help of the NGOs, non-governmental organizations, or from the government side, give some water to them so that they're not in crisis while traveling. So all those small corrections we kept doing, and I think things started improving after that. By 31st of May, we had completed the task, at least for the Uttar Pradesh.
That's awesome effort, and I appreciate all the unsung hero like you, so many IPS, IS officers, district collectors, all coming together and making it successful. Just to set the context for the audience, the number of people transported out of Gujarat and safely sent home is close to 10 to 15% of countries like Singapore and UAE's population. So that was the level of effort. So because generally it is our fashion, right? We start comparing apples to oranges, right? Singapore
That's right.
we can't do it in India. So that was the idea of setting this context that 10 to 15% of a country's population in span of close to 30 days move safely from one place to another flawlessly. Yes, there were teething troubles, which all of you did so well. And I'm thankful to our police. I'm thankful to all the administrative officers and IS and IPSs who had made it possible. From a citizen of India, thank you, sir. So, sir, this will also bring us to a little bit of a question more on your policing. So, pandemic makes people do things very, very different from their personal and normal life. A totally peaceful person, because of the stress he is going, he becomes very different person. And we are seeing this violence going across the world, whether it is US and other part of the world, including we also saw some of the issues in India, as you have rightly mentioned. I would like to understand from you, what would be the inherent reason for people acting in a very different manner from their normal behavior in such testing times?
I think this is a very relevant thing to talk about. But I would say that Indian people have been very, very patient. They have been very calm. They have behaved most responsibly. If you see the implementation of lockdown, I think the kind of support we got from the people, it was enormous. And at many places, people, praised police service, medical service, and others for this. So I would say from my side that people were extremely good in supporting the call of the government for the lockdown. There were problems, but that problems were slightly, I would say, perhaps we should have anticipated it better. There were some, unexpected incidents happened. Maybe, Delhi UP border, there were some incidents, and there are problems in Surat and many other places. But I would say that people in India generally they behave extremely responsible. Only situations where slightly they got restless, where they, because of the numbers, we could sort of, could not bridge the gap, which, should have been slightly, we have been. So, but, I would say that people have responded very well. There were cases of violation of lockdown and things like that. Some people started, but that's very human, and it requires continuous training and awareness creation problems. Governments have made their effort to sort of make the people aware through publicity and things like that. But at the same time, I would say that it is a mammoth task because the problem is not yet over, and we are not sure how long it is going to take. So it should be visualized for a long-term planning, to visualize the problems from the police point of view itself. We should anticipate the problems because there will be unemployment. The economy is sort of will have a time not be there. This additional population which have gone from city to the rural areas, that will put the stress on the rural economy and the rural situations. We have to find out the ways to deal with that extra numbers in those rural areas and find out the solutions. I think UP government has come out with some ideas. We have to try, and because we have to continuously respond and maybe anticipate and respond in advance to the problem which we might face. With that, I would say that Indian people have responded quite responsibly to the situation.
Right, so that's awesome. So now that brings us to something which you love talking, and I would also love talking. You started an initiative a few years back called Buddha Se Kabir, and it's become so relevant in current environment. We are seeing in one country after another people getting discriminated on basis of their race, color, and skin, religion, and even last names. Can you enlighten our audience how they can connect and relate to this whole movement of yours, which is based on the principle of equity, independence, and social justice?
So, coming to Buddha Se Kabir tak, let me tell you that Buddha and Kabir were two great icons in the Indian history, culture, even you can say religion. Not necessarily they were, religious people, or maybe some people call them religious. Buddhism is a religion today, and it is being practiced in 60 plus countries all over the world. So that's a religion for people. But when Buddha came, I think that was, a different context, and he was, sort of helping the evolution of Indian tradition, which was at that time slightly caught up with rituals, caught up with too much of religions, too much of religious practices, which had become, archaic, which had become exploitative. And Buddha was one who came and challenged those practices, brought the human being at the center of the philosophical worldview. Kabir came 2000 years later, around 15th century. People say that he, did the different views about his lifespan. But let us, take say 15th century to his. He died in 1520, so that is more or less settled. But his birth year is not settled. So he came in that period, 2000 years later, and that time there was a Muslim rule in India, and there were Hindu tradition at that time, and fundamentalism, the religious fundamentalism in Hindu community as well as the Muslim community, was happening in some form or other. And Kabir was one who, challenged those fundamentalist streaks in the society. He challenged the rituals because he said his basic philosophy was that God is one. God is one, and therefore everybody in this world, is equal. He belonged to the philosophical school of monoism. He believed in one God. And if you see the Indian tradition, I'll talk about a little bit about the Indian tradition, and that is how this movement Buddha Se Kabir tak has come into the picture, how we have named this. So if we see Buddha who happened in 6th century BC, and Kabir happened in 15th century. These 2000 years have been very important of India. This has brought all the religions of the world in India. Before Buddha, the Hindu tradition existed, and that period was called Vedic period. The religious texts according to which the life and the religious life and the social life was decided. That Vedic period resulted into a suffocating ritualistic society, which became hierarchical and also exploitative. And therefore, Buddha thought that equality is important, and he said that suffering of the human being is the most important. He came out with the 4 noble truths. There is suffering, there is a reason for the suffering, there is a way to remove the suffering, and he talked about those ways. There are 8-fold paths. In Sanskrit or in Hindi, we say Ashtangik Marg. So there are 8-fold paths to overcome this suffering and reach the nirvana, the liberation, the salvation. That is what he talked about. And he also talked about something called middle path. In Hindi, they called it Madhyam Marg, middle path. He said that extremes are not good. Extremes will always have flaw. Extreme views are not good for the society. So if there are 2 extreme views, find a middle path. And middle path is one of the most important approaches to the Indian society. We have a tradition of dialogue which arose out of the middle path approach of Buddha. So you see later on in the Indian history, religion and culture, you find the tradition of dialogue. And, a book was written by a very famous Nobel laureate called Argumentative Indian. So we Indians, argue, and many times we argue with logic. And logic has been very, very important right from the Vedic period. So, so that tradition, the rationality, the approach of rationality was brought by Buddha, and his theory of dependent origination. They called it theory of dependent origination. That for everything there is a cause. Without cause, something can't happen. That was the basis of the sort of rational approach to life in India, and which is very important. Today we fall to dogma, we fall to blind faith, we fall to things which are not really scientific. We don't fit into the scientific temper framework of society. So Buddha gave he was first to give this logic of theory of dependent origination and Madhyam Marga. That became the at the same time, during the Buddha's time, Mahavir came. He propounded another religion called Jain religion, and the basic fundamental principles of Jain religion, if you see, there are two philosophies. One is called Anekantvad, that is theory of manyness of truth. The truth is many, truth is not one. And the second principle was Syadvad, that is relativity of truth. Truth is not absolute. Truth can be, truth is relative, and from different perspectives, different frames of references, the truth will be different. So these two fundamental principles of Jainism, that is Anekantvad and Syadvad, it gives the basic framework in which the Indian diversity prospered. And that gave the philosophical and the logical framework in which India has developed culturally, religiously, and even spiritually, I would say. You move in the history from 500-600 BC to 1st century AD. There was a philosopher called Nagarjuna in the Buddhist tradition. He gave a theory called Shunyavad. And by Shunyavad, he means that, there's something absolute which we don't know, which is infinite, which is, big, huge, endless, beginningless, that kind of thing, and which later on was taken by Shankaracharya in 8th century in the Hindu tradition itself. And that theory Shankaracharya gave, which is called Advait Vedanta. That is monoist God, strict monoist God, and he said the God is one and the rest is all illusion. So you see how the Indian religious tradition in the philosophical traditions is moving and disagreeing from the past, adding. Shankaracharya, for example, learned something from Buddhism. He started the concept of mutt, that is the religious temples, I would say, in different parts of the country. That he took from Buddha. Buddha started mutts, and Buddha started mutts where he'll invite the lower state of the society, the women which were neglected before that. So a sort of equality being practiced by Buddha. Now when Shankaracharya comes, he gets the Hinduism revived all over again, but he picks up something from Buddhism. He also picks up the non-violence from Jain tradition. So anything new comes in India, there's something from the past. It is not completely disconnected from the past. We take something from the past, it adds something, and presents before the society in a new way. Quoting Nehru, when talking about Indian culture, he said, and it's very important, he said that Indian society and culture is like a manuscript, and wherein people come at different phases of time, they write something on this, but the earlier writings, they don't vanish. They remain as it is, depending on its strength, that is upon its connect with the people. So kind of streams flowing over time scale, mixing with each other, influencing each other, and that is how the Indian composite culture comes into existence. Even in Vedanta, there was always scope for difference. In the Vedanta tradition comes Ramanuj. While Shankaracharya talks about Advait, single monoist, strict monoist God, here comes Ramanuj, who talks about qualified monoism. He said the monoism is all right, but I want to have my own God. I want to have this picture. I want to worship. I want to love. So that is where the Bhakti tradition comes. Bhakti tradition it means the devotion to the God. That devotion to God, that's an era where there were poets, there were musicians who came and they worshiped God through songs, music, dance. Mirabai, for example, she sang song for Krishna. Her Krishna was not the Sagun Krishna. It was not the physical Krishna. It was the abstract monoist God. And that is why she respected another saint from Banaras called Ravidas. Ravidas opposed the discrimination on the basis of the caste. So this tradition continues, and Kabir is just continuation of the tradition. Kabir differs from Shankaracharya, though he belongs to the same monoist school of God, but he differs in the sense that Shankara told that if you want to reach God, you have to study Vedas, you have to read Upanishad, the religious texts, you have to have Guru. But Kabir said, no, all these books are not required. He said a poem. Pothi padi padi jag mua pandit bhayanako. You read thousands of books, you can never be a learned man. Dhai akhar prem ka. 2.5 letters of love, and you will be the most knowledgeable person. So that is his basic philosophy. He said, love is the way to reach God. These books, these religions, all becomes redundant. This is not required, and that is why Kabir moves beyond religion to reach God, and that is the that is the philosophical context from which we pick Kabir to represent our movement. That religion is really not important. What is important is the humanity. And Kabir becomes a very vocal poet, social reformer, as well as the spiritual person. The advantage in the Indian society, as you know, Indian society is not just a monolithic society. There will be people who are rationalists, there will be people who are non-believers, there are people who are believers, people who believe in monoism, people who believe in dualism, people who believe in thousands and crores of God. There's a saying that we in India we have 330 million gods. So and we worship whomsoever we want in whatever manner we wish. That is the divergence, and which gives the extreme range of beliefs, faiths to prosper in India, and everybody has his own way of. From here we picked up the diversity concept of diversity, which India is, and that comes to our constitution also. If you see the freedom struggle of India, it's not that we made the constitution in 1950 and we put equality, social justice, and no, it's not that. Indian secularism, for example, it's not a political secularism; it is evolved secularism. While in West, say for example, the United States of America or the Europe, one day they decided, the states decided that keep the church and the government will be isolated. So they visualize a complete isolation between the state and the religion. While in Indian system, it is not so. The secularism is evolved, as I talked about Buddha taking something from the Vedic period, Shankaracharya coming from, taking something from Buddhism and things like that. So we have kind of multiple streams, and we have learned the art of respecting each other. Gandhi said, Sarva Dharma Sambhav, respect all the religions equally. That is the definition of Indian secularism. And that is what we aim at. That is what is there in our constitution. And our constitution is a reflection of our, 3,000, 4,000 years of culture, history, and the social traditions. It is not just that we picked up those words. We have kind of a sense of the whole Indian tradition. And that is why, Gandhi was successful so much in India, because he understood the Indian tradition. He will pick up the non-violence of Jain tradition. He will pick up the middle path of Buddha. If you go to Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad, there is a stone put in one of the kutirs, which says that this is the place from where Gandhi started the Dandi March to oppose the salt law which was imposed by the Britishers. And when he started Dandi March, he compared that with Mahabhinishkraman of Lord Buddha. That means Buddha, when he left home, denounced the world and left his the princely clothes and all that, and he starts his journey to attain knowledge. That term is called Mahabhinishkraman. And Gandhi compares that with Dandi March. So see how Gandhi picks up the Indian traditions, and he understands so much in detail about Indian philosophy, society, traditions, and that is how he could connect so much with the Indian masses. It was not easy, diverse country like India, such a huge country, different cultures, languages, and Gandhi was sort of, getting the nerve of people, whether it is Punjab, he will go to Rawalpindi for, to make the Hindu-Muslim understand the unity between them. He'll go to Kerala for, associating with the tradition of Narayan Guru to, counter the atrocities in Dalits. Similarly, he will go to, West Bengal, Assam, and he will travel by train, and that is why he became so. My point is that we in India are a diverse, multicultural society, and it is very deep rooted in us. Unfortunately, I think all over the world, as you said, that there are frameworks which talk about a monolithic, rigid description of societies, religion, and culture. And that's, I think, very regressive. The world is moving forward with communication, technology, development, and people coming together. I think we have to find ways to live together. India, lucky to have practiced this last, say, about 2,000 years, more than 2,000 years, and we have sort of perfected, not perfected, I mean, there are always problems, new problems come in, but we know to sort of resolve those issues. Our language, for example, one of the main languages called Urdu is a beautiful example of typical Indian language which came into existence in India, and it was a product of Persian and the local dialects available at that in the region of Awadh, Delhi, Punjab, and Hyderabad. Music, for example, our Indian original tradition was Drupad. During the period of Mughals, we developed something called Khayali style. And we didn't stop there. I mean, see the diversity. We move further, we develop Khayali style, then we go to Thumri, we go to, Chaiti, and all those things, new versions. And even today, the Indian music, even see the film music, it is continuously evolving. Music of 1950, music of 1970, music of 2010, and today it's so much change. And we are not hesitant in picking up from the West. We are not hesitant, in picking from China or any other countries. And that's perhaps the beauty of Indian tradition, where we are open. So we have to counter those efforts which try to project a monolith and a single description of the society. And that is why we use Buddha and Kabir and the whole history of India. And we come up to Gandhi. It's not that only Buddha and Kabir, it's Buddha se Kabir, from Buddha to Kabir, and up to Gandhi. And Gandhi is the last strong pillar of Indian tradition and Indian society.
So very well articulated. In fact, today I realized one thing which I was doing regularly, right? And I was not knowing why it is like that. I was advising a top CEO in US, and he said, Deepak, I like one thing about you. You know what? That you always find problems with a solution. Right? And I said, sir, this is actually because I don't know why, but we Indians, we believe in multiple perspectives. So I see things with too many perspectives, and that leads me to find nitpicking a problem in a solution so that we can improve the solution. And you'll be surprised. Today I realized why it happened.
So I'll give you one example from Jainism. To explain Jainism, the basic two principles are talked about Anekantvad. They give example. There are 7 visually impaired people and who are asked to describe an elephant. So one person goes and holds the leg of the elephant. He said it is like a pillars. Other person holds the front part, and he says it is like a branch of a tree. He holds the tail, and he says that it is a broom. Things like that. But none of them are complete. So you complete all the different possible understandings of a situation, and that is what I think you are referring about, and that makes the complete truth, I believe.
Right. No, that's really very, very well articulated, and love the way actually. In fact, I was able to identify whatever I was thinking actually from where it has come up. So thanks for that. So sir, again, talking a little bit more of Buddha se Kabir, what are the elements which makes it so relevant to the current global scenario we are seeing today? Because what we have been talking, I am able to connect the dots with what's happening globally. So we would like to understand the elements which you believe would be able to connect directly with the currently what we are facing globally.
So, say for example, in India, the different methods we are adopting to spread the message of Buddhist Kabir is, one is that we take out the yatra maybe once a year, maybe more small towns also sometimes we take out the yatra. We talk about the plural, diverse traditions of India, whatever we had talked. We talk about that. We talk about we give the examples through music, the songs, Kabir's music, for example. There's another saint from the Nath tradition, Gorakhnath. He also talked about equality of human beings and all that. And today, you see, somehow, at times, if you go to social media, you find a lot of aggression. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of lack of accommodation for a different viewpoint. Only, I think we have started seeing the things in binary, either this or that. There's nothing. So, you do this, you are good. If you do this, you are a nationalist. If you don't do this, you are not a nationalist. If you do this, you are a religious person. You don't this, you are a leftist, and things like that. So that is how we, invoke the middle path of Buddha, and we say that let us sit together. For example, we have tried some experiments like, in a Jain temple, we have artists, Muslim artists, who will go there, who will sit. All of us sit together, and they will sing the songs of Kabir in a Jain temple. Muslim singing songs of Kabir, which belongs to the tradition of Shankaracharya or the monist philosophy. So these kind of fusions we are trying and making the people to understand that this is our tradition. This is how the world, it should be. And and we have been able to kind of, targeting youth to understand these principles of humanity and our constitution. We say that the only, the kind of nationalism we can have in India is the constitutional nationalism. The principles of the constitution are extreme, and we have to have any nationalism, it has to base on those principles, because those principles, as I discussed earlier, they represent our long tradition and culture of 3,000, 4,000 years, and that becomes relevant to other parts. Invoke the middle path. I mean, US is seeing a lot of problems, law and order problems these days. I mean, there is a viewpoint, there is another viewpoint, and that sort of rigidity of opinions, rigidity of positions is not desirable. There has to be dialogue between different community, the government, the different stakeholders. I mean, it's another country. I'll not like to speak much about that, but I would certainly say that dialogue. There is no, it has to be dialogue, has to be the essential part of the society day-to-day process, and we understand each other. In Indian context, if you say that, I will say that, politics has dominated recently the Indian masses, and that has been, pushed culture and, cultural tools out of the social space. We have to get the cultural, socio-cultural tools back, with us, so that we have better understanding of ourselves, our society. Politics has to follow society and culture, not other way around. I think what is happening today is the society, culture, and everything is following the politics. It has become politics driven. It should be other way around. The society and its culture, its traditions, its strong value system should drive the politics. It should be able to dictate to the politicians that we are this, we are a secular country, we are a diverse country, we respect each other, we don't want fights, we don't want aggression, we want love, peace. That is what Gandhi talked about. That is what Buddha, Mahavir talked about. Everybody, Swami Vivekananda, he talked about Jeev Seva is the ultimate worship of the God. So we have plenty, with us, plenty of history and culture with us, to sort of, invoke all over the world to have, humanity to get strong and give equality and justice to all the social stakeholders.
So actually, like you rightly said that at the center should be our constitution, and our constitution has been so beautiful in talking about we being a nation which is a social, secular, and democratic. Now we are seeing those very, very basic tenets moving right or left, right? We would like to understand a little bit, like by adopting Buddha Kabir and being part of this movement, how do you see that actually we are going to come close to the binding principle of our nation, which is our constitution?
So what we have to do is that we have to go to the young people and say, for example, this year Yatra, just example I'm giving, we went to postgraduate college at Kushinagar, college at Kushinagar. Then we went to the University of Gorakhpur, to the political science department and to the history department. Then we went to an engineering college. Then we went to a girls' postgraduate college in Muslim locality, where mostly the Muslim girls were the students and teachers were the students. Then we went to something called a Fatima College, which is a missionary-run college, and and the best part that everywhere we went, we had representatives of all the sections of society: Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, the women, the weaker sections, everybody. And there were instances where a Muslim member went to the church or the Jain temple, which he had never done. And these kind of examples before the society really motivate the people, and we saw tremendous response among the youngsters. The problem, I think, is that the youngsters and many of this generation, last 25, 30 years, we are lacking the knowledge about our history and traditions. And what we learn is, unfortunately, that WhatsApp University, those fabricated, aggressive and sometimes the hateful messages and things like that, which are anti certain communities, certain groups, and things like that. So we have to, if we understand our society, culture, and history, and that is what we are trying to do through music, literature, and things like that. Even theater. There's a group from Banaras called. There's a group of Banarasi young people, about 10 people, Prerna Kala Manch. Those who perform with us. There's a girl from Banaras who is a dancer who dances on Kabir and spreads the message of Kabir. And there's another friend of mine, Medhaji, who is working on Gorakhnath and his ideas of equality and things. So we are sort of coming together, different organizations, and trying to reach out the younger, because the younger generation is going to decide the direction. And we have to understand the essential ingredients of India, which is basically diversity, multiculturalism, and pluralism, a secular state, but secular state, typically an Indian Sarvadharma Sambhav, where everybody is equal. So we have to have our traditions and history together in creating our modernity cannot be divided of our history. History is a very important part of modern society which we are looking. And I think, gradually we are getting footholds in new areas. We are reaching out to a lot of people. A lot of people are joining these groups. A lot of artists are joining these groups. Literary people are joining this group. And I think that is where we see a lot of force. Especially the educational institutions are coming together. We are trying to build up the ownership with the educational institutions, and maybe a few, we are planning to go to the village areas to spread this message. But with this COVID, I think the whole thing is slightly held up. But we, want to take it to the rural areas and involve more and more people at different levels across the society.
That's a great message, and sir, as you rightly said, that your generation actually, they were more in touch with the ground realities, more in touch with what our culture used to be. Our generation, little bit of, like I'm saying, that we are in middle, right? We have seen the pre-digital and the post-digital era both. So we are like, still we judge things based on our understanding of pre-digital era and the post-digital era. Unfortunately, today's youth, as you rightly said, that WhatsApp universities, Facebook chats, right? And sometimes they start just Googling it and believing that's the truth. And we have found that the pandemic of the fake news actually impacts the brain of young people a lot. In this last section of our discussion, my last question from you would be can you give some specific, I'll say that, silver bullets to the youth of today to become a better human being? Because I think we cannot be a better machine than a machine, but we can always be a better human being so that we can make machine do right things.
So, this question to this answer to this question is, from the previous point itself, that I would like to tell the young generation of India to understand India and its past, its culture, its history. And that is how you will appreciate the modern India much better. I would not, we talked about the digital divide, but I would say that, at any stage of Indian history, we were progressive, we are liberal. 2005 years ago, we could talk about the relative truth. So we are always modern. The only thing is that technology had its own pace, and last 100 years, 120 years, avalanche of technology, and that comes to that we should always take it to our advantage. Now, for example, this Budh Se Kabir Tak, we have been trying to use the technology because you have the limitation of resources. It's not funded by any big house or government or anything. It's always started with the contribution within ourselves. But the only thing we had perhaps the human resources and say some technology which made it cheaper to reach out to the people, and we could get hold of talented people, creative people to articulate the tradition through music. For example, I had not, before we started this project, I had not heard a song from Nath tradition which was played on a stage, on a concert like stage. We got the song, we prepared the music. Our young talented friends, there are plenty of them. We have a Budh Se Kabir Tak band now. Within a year or so of setting up, we now have a band, and all young talented people are working on voluntary basis, girls, boys, and a lot of ideas coming. And so the Buddha Kabir, all right, but we started a song on Gorakhnath, and they played it on 13th of January this year in an audience at Gorakhpur, and that was revelation sort of, and to sort of re-explore Gorakhnath for the people in that area, even for the people of the whole India. I think which sometimes that the basic teachings get subdued by these great people. So we have been able to, and we are trying, if not completely successful so far, but we are trying to take out those basic essence of their teachings, giving to the young generation, and saying that here there is a 800 years ago Gorakhnath came and he talked about equality, and his sampradaya, his sect, there are Hindus, there are Muslims. The yogis of that sampradaya, that sect, they include Muslims, and these Muslims, such a beautiful tradition. They sing the songs of Shankar God Shankar. They sing songs of Gorakhnath. They sing songs of Bhartihari. Muslims singing song of Hindu gods. This is something extremely, extremely Indian in character, and you'll find nowhere in the world. We want to take this beautiful example of Indian tradition to the world, that this happens in India, and this shows the way for the future. So our modernity has to base on these basic human values.
That's a great viewpoint, and I believe I have learned a lot stuff from you today. Right. In fact, I have discovered myself after talking to you, because I was doing a lot of things.
Same here, talking to you, kind of, I got an opportunity to open up myself in a different level, different platform. Obviously, you have a worldwide platform, and that gave me a slightly new way to think about this whole project, and that will really, in future, that will be a guiding factor to move onwards.
No, sir, I'll collaborate with you. I'll try to add wherever small value I can in your movement, and because this is something what I strongly believe. We do a lot of business, we do a lot of things, but end of the day, the peace, which is actually currently is in a short supply, absolutely, will only come from doing the activities what you are doing, and will need it. So, sir, thanks a lot for being an awesome officer as well, a great human being. Thanks for your time, and audience would love it. Thank you.
It has been my pleasure to talk to you, and talking so freely and frankly, and such a nice atmosphere. I'm really grateful to your platform to speak to people all over the world, and thank you personally. And I'll be looking forward to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Take care.